Hey there.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
We were just talking about a practical application for forgiveness is when your minister has trouble with the technical things on Sunday.
I can feel you.
Just going to go ahead and let these two people in and start the music again.
I can see you, and I know all the pain you've been going through. This place you're standing feels unending, like a mountain that never will move, like the clouds that gently float across the sky. This too shall pass. I've been lonely, I've been broken, like a river that never could reach the sea. Always seeking, never finding everything I was meant
evening. Need to turn your mic on, Rocio. Let's see. It looks like we don't have anybody in the waiting room right now, so that's good.
What did I do? You said something?
I just unmuted everyone, so you can say hello to one another.
Hi, Bev.
Good evening. Hi, Bev. Hey, Mandy.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Bye, Mark.
Hello. How are you, Mark?
Hi, Rocio.
Hi.
So do we want to take a moment and
Hi,
just
Dave.
do a little check-in, see how everyone's doing?
Yes.
Not really, maybe. I don't know.
Don't jump on all one.
Same old, same old.
Okay.
Same old, same old.
Well, I'll just jump into the presentation and then we can start with our discussion.
Okay.
So of course tonight is forgiveness, as the email blast said, and this is just a follow-up on our conversation yesterday during the Sunday gathering. I'll bring up some of the points that I made yesterday, but I just wanted to have a little bit further discussion because judgment, forgiveness, there's always some people that it kind of stokes a little bit. So the metaphysical meaning of forgiveness, according to the revealing word, forgiveness is a process of giving up the false for the true, erasing sin, and I put in the brackets, missing the mark, because that's what we call sin in unity, is missing the mark, an error from the mind and body. It's closely related to repentance, which is a turning from belief in sin or all the mistakes or the missing of the mark to belief in God and righteousness and all things come together, work together for good. You know, that belief in what we really know is true about our world, as opposed to putting our focus on mistakes or that things that we've judged as less than or somehow missing the mark. And a sin or a thought missing that mark is forgiven when one ceases to sin or ceases to continue to hold those error thoughts. And true forgiveness is only established through renewing of the mind and body with thoughts and words of truth. So it's something that we have complete dominion over, complete control, if that's a word that resonates with you. But we have that choice as a human being. And Imelda Shanklin, who is one of the classic unity authors, one of the greatest teachers, it says here, I pulled this quote out of unitytruth.net or truthunity.net, gives an important prayer test because she says, in effect, this is her prayer: Father, forgive me for expecting in the human that which is found only in the divine. Now that sounds like separation, but that's not what she means. If you look at this note, forgive me, in other words, I have sinned or I've had error thoughts or fallen short. This the mark of holding those thoughts of your divinity. And by expecting in the human of the person something that can be found only in the Christ nature with that person. We're looking for the human in their behaviors and in their words and actions from that personality aspect be something that really we know is within that Christ, within that individuation. And we have to take responsibility for looking for the less than in others. And then forgive ourselves for looking for that error, for looking for that failure, that falling short in another person. It says forgiveness really means the giving up of something. When you forgive yourself, you cease to do the things that you should not do as judge another. Jesus said that the man has power to forgive sin. Man has power to forgive sin. That's not what we've traditionally been taught. We've been taught only some power up in the sky, some guy in flowing robes and long hair, gray face and gray beard could forgive our sins. But man has the power to forgive sin. Sin is the falling short of divine law. And repentance and forgiveness are the only means that man has of getting out of sin and, in effect, coming into harmony with the law, meaning divine law, the capital the law, meaning that
Oliver.
absolute.
You went in the bathroom.
So lack of forgiveness, I pointed this out yesterday, lack of forgiveness has been shown in research to create higher blood pressure, faster heart rates, tension in your face muscles, sweat gland activity, higher cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and it compromises the immune system. All of these can be traced to a lack of forgiveness, because forgiveness creates stress on us mentally and emotionally, and ultimately physically. It is through forgiveness that true spiritual healing is accomplished. Forgiveness removes the errors of the mind and body harmony, the errors of the mind and body harmony. And body harmony results as in consonance with the law. So it removes the errors of the mind, and then your body harmony is the result. So the positive effects, as proven by research. Now, these were things that Charles Fillmore had been saying long before there was positive psychology research, as what's being done at Virginia Commonwealth University. But now they're proving what he had divined in his meditation, that it reduces and eliminates resentment. And then the physical effects that come. If you've ever held resentment, you know that it locks you out. And we're less motivated to retaliate against someone once we've forgiven, and more motivated by feelings of goodwill. And it moves us past the negative emotions into the more positive, the higher vibration emotions. It moves us towards a net positive feeling and restores more benevolent and cooperative goals. It increases our self-esteem. And when we are a person who forgives, we let go of all that's dragging us down. It raises our self-esteem and therefore gives us better moods. And then finally, I just sort of extrapolated my own, how forgiveness sets us free. You know, I'm all about the energy and the vibe. So it releases, and I've experienced this myself, it releases that energetic bond. A lot of times we don't even realize, by holding someone in thought, we're creating an energetic bond to that other person or to that circumstance or to whatever that attachment we have. And the only way to cut that bond is through forgiveness. And as we've just reviewed, first forgive ourselves for making the judgment, and then we forgive the other person for oftentimes being a human being. And it eliminates blame and a victim consciousness, because you're no longer finding fault with another or yourself. You're no longer blaming. And when you blame, there's always a victim. And it's usually ourselves. And a victim consciousness is not an empowered point of view. So it empowers you going forward to make better choices. Because you chose to forgive, then you can make other choices of how you look at yourself and how you look at others. And once you forgive, you're free to forget. You don't even have to think about that thing anymore. Whatever that moment was, whatever that offense that you told yourself took place, you can just let it go. It might be somewhere in your database if you had to dig it up for some reason, but you don't have to drag it around like a 50-pound ball and chain. And you can choose not to judge in the future. And I love this quote, and I'm just going to keep throwing it at you until people decide they want to just take it up for themselves. If you do not judge, you never have to forgive. So if we can get to that place of non-judgment, forgiveness isn't even on our radar anymore because we're not holding anything against anyone else or ourselves. And that is my presentation of information. And now we can have a conversation. I was not trying to rap or rhyme or whatever that weird thing I just said, but that's what I did. So. Any thoughts?
Well, the hardest, they say the hardest person to forgive is oneself. And working with the Wednesday Ho'oponopono, I went and saw his video where he has the students doing that. And I think it's very amazing because no matter how much you think you've forgiven yourself, there's still more. The awareness in these times, because of the time you have to think, and you have little, you have more time, period. Then you start to realize, oh, and that, and that, and this. And so it's been very, very, very powerful for me.
I think you're exactly right. It's such a quiet time that we are more present with ourselves.
That's it.
And those little cobwebs in the corners are starting to blow around and get our attention. And whereas when we're busy, we just fly right by them and we don't notice.
Yeah. Too many distractions.
You know, that quote that you have there about from Sri Sri reminds me of my favorite lesson from the Course in Miracles, which says, God is the love in which I forgive. It says, God does not forgive because he never condemned. And there must be condemnation before forgiveness is necessary. It's like I first read that years ago. I flagged that. That's my favorite lesson in the whole book.
Yeah, I think that's just fundamental to a more metaphysical understanding of who God is and what Jesus taught about God. Because Jesus certainly never, now there was some language attributed to Jesus about God forgiving, but I think that was not Jesus's message at all. Jesus's message was pure love. And when you are pure love, there's no condemnation, there's no judgment, and there's no need to forgive. So thanks for sharing that, Mark. That's really relevant. Any other thoughts? Hetty, you have any thoughts on forgiveness?
If we finally get to the point where we do not judge, then we know there is nothing to forgive.
It's very true. And I think a lot of people have been taught that you should judge. I know when I first brought this up, when I first, in my first year at least, being here in the Hill Country, I remember a talk specifically where I brought this this idea of non-judgment. And, you know, I can still see the face of the woman who said, but aren't we supposed to judge? And I'm like, no, we're not supposed to judge one another. But it is in our race consciousness, and it is in our win-lose culture. You know, we misunderstand the value of contrast. Contrast doesn't have to mean conflict. We can disagree with one another. I have a number of friends that we completely disagree on many, many things, but we don't have to go into conflict over it. We don't have to make the other person wrong because they believe differently. If we had to do that, if we felt like we had to judge, we could not be friends. And then it would, it would really diminish the richness of our lives if we only ever spend time with people or had conversations with people who completely agreed with us. Thoughts, Dave Hubbard?
Well, it seems to me that if we don't allow ourselves to be offended, then we really have nothing to forgive.
Exactly.
Say that again. I missed what he
If we
said.
don't allow ourselves to be offended, then we have no reason to forgive because we have nothing to forgive. I mean, to me, if I'm offended, then I might have something that I need to deal with as far as forgiveness is concerned.
Mhm.
So the trick is to not allow yourself to become offended by anything.
And what do you mean by
And then, of course,
allow?
I think people do that. They love to be offended. They love to get angry. I think it's a natural human thing to allow yourself to blow off about whatever. It's such a great feeling to be mad at somebody about something. So, just don't allow it to just don't allow it to happen. I mean, there's too much beauty. There's too much beauty around to allow that kind of crap to happen,
Dave, you brought up a really good point, because I think a lot of people, in the absence of embracing joy and awe and thrill and wonderment, because sometimes that's scary to let yourself be vulnerable enough to have those really positive emotions. In order to have some kind of emotion, people choose the negative ones because they feel that they have more control over them, or maybe they're more familiar. But at least it is an emotion, and it's something, it's a feeling. And when you shut yourself off from feelings, sometimes the negative feelings are safer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And think of the last time you really lost it and you really got mad at somebody. Probably a ridiculous circumstance. Didn't it really feel good? It does. It does. You end up regretting it if you stop to think about the rationale, if there was such a thing. But it sure did feel good. It does. I think it does. You're not.
It can be a release.
But I'll seek my forgiveness. I'll seek forgiveness for having thought that.
No. I'll be honest with you. I went to a moment when you said that where I did get very frustrated and angry with someone, not to their face, because I tend to kind of go into, that fight, flight, or freeze. I usually freeze a little bit, and then it all goes inside, and then, later I have my moment. But it did not feel good to me to have all that, because what it did was, because I'm empathic, it kind of triggered, being frustrated in that moment just kind of released the dragon. It was like a lot of feelings came up. It was all at home, and it was all, ranting basically to myself. But then I really had to kind of let that magnitude of intense feeling move through me. And, it didn't feel good. I think it was necessary, and I think there was healing in it. But yeah, it didn't feel good to me. That's why I'm like, I wasn't saying it doesn't feel good. What now?
I was going to say the last time I did, it felt really good because he really deserved it.
I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's good to get angry and get it out of your system, but don't carry it with you. If it's after it's out, you feel relieved and it's gone.
Absolutely. You talk about getting sick. You just carry that with you. That'll make you sick.
That's a really good point, Hetty, is that you're going to have emotions, and they're not all going to be positive ones.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And that's when it's time to kind of forgive yourself and go, well, that's what I felt. Luckily for me, in that moment, I wasn't hitting, blasting it at someone else. But those feelings they're real. And I think denying them or hiding them somewhere in our body is not a healthy thing.
Or judging you then.
Or judging myself for having them.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, that was some time of reflection. I had to kind of think, where did all of that come from? Because it clearly wasn't all about that moment. You know, it wasn't all within the context of that one meeting. So
The tricky one is to recognize the fact that you need to forgive, because it may not be a situation that you recognize as being something that is nagging at you because you need to forgive it. There's so many instances where you, at least in my case, I can remember numbers of instances where I didn't know that was the problem until I really began to analyze, you know, why I was feeling the way I was, and was able to feel better after I forgave myself in that case, almost always. But so often it's hidden, and you don't really know that that's the problem. And when you're not dealing with face-to-face human interaction.
mm-hmm. So how did you, if you don't mind my asking, Dave, how did you come around to the fact that there was something in, without, I mean, I'm not asking you to divulge the details.
No, I know where you're going already.
But,
I know where
okay.
you're going already. You know, it's really a matter of analysis. It's a matter of knowing that you just, something's wrong. You just don't feel right. And particularly if you can think about a subject or a person or something else and feel it more strongly. You know, it's really a matter of desperation. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean often in a matter of analysis, it's a matter of, you know, what, I know something's wrong, I'm doing something to myself. This is something I know I'm doing. What in the world am I doing? And, you know, it's that kind of a mind game, really, for me anyway. So I don't have a nice, clean answer for you, other than to say that it really is a matter of spending a lot of time trying to figure it out.
So you're doing that mentally. Are you
Yes.
also bringing that in to your heart at the same time?
Yeah, it's more reflection than it is mental. You know, it's really a matter of opening up and just kind of letting it flow, if it will.
Yeah, I get that. I'm always a reflector after something. It's like, okay, let me listen. And I'm always, I do this because that's where I hear my little guidance that comes. But it's, yeah, it's like, what do I need to know? What do I need to learn? What is it? Where am I really in this?
You can call that the blessings of an introvert, can't you? I really see it that way. I really, really do. You know, I mean, I know these folks that are extroverted, and not to pick at them or anything, but, you know, if they would stop and quiet themselves a little bit and try to reflect a little bit every once in a while, it would be a very good thing for them.
Well, in a way, I'm sure.
Not that he's judging, no.
That's right.
What was that, Dave? David?
I was just agreeing, not that he's judging.
Yeah, he may be a little bit of, you know, pigeonholing. You know, it's interesting because I think a lot of people exhibit full-on extroversion when they might be a little bit close to that middle range, just like I am. I'm only a scooch more introverted than I am extroverted. And it depends on what I allow to express, how, you know, but for things like that, I definitely move into my introversion more deeply than my extroversion.
We play the game in whatever way we need to play the game.
Work with what we have, right?
Well, that's how it works. I'm very, very introverted, and I enjoy being introverted, but I can play the game if I have to.
This is what life is all about. It's a game.
Yes, ma'am. That's for sure.
And now that you said that, Hetty, I don't know how many of you have ever read Florence Scovel Shin's book. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It is so easy to read and yet so profound in so many ways. I read it about probably 45 years ago, and I thought, wow. I just thought, if only I could be more positive. If only all my thoughts were this way, or if only I knew the power of my words. But
It got you thinking about it though, didn't it?
It did. It was a primer for sure. Because I knew there was something in it for me. I just didn't have any exposure to unity at the time. And I was reading M. Scott Peck's Road Less Traveled and different things like that. But, that's kind of the tippy-toeing in.
Good way to start.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did that too, Beverly. I did that too. Don't push the river, it runs by itself.
Yeah, and if we would just get in the flow of it instead of paddling upstream thinking we have to be somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Should I put it in mic, or you're hearing me? Are you hearing me?
I hear you just fine, yeah.
Now that you're hearing me, I lost what I was going to say. No, but I have noticed I am an extrovert, definitely. But I have analyzed, looked at it, and I decide, well, it's hard for me not to be an extrovert, but I decide, some things, they're not, in the speaking of them, it doesn't, I don't know. I do have to kind of refrain myself for over. And what I'm working on is on the other side. It's like, why don't you just first completely listen to the person in front of you instead of, you're thinking of your own. And it has to do with the ego. You want to, take part, or the culture, whatever my makeup, but it's just listening, because we lack a lot of that, of truly listening. Either because I'm judging that the person is saying things that who cares, or but it's that connection energetically. Is that connection to the person without words. She's speaking, I'm listening, I'm all there for her. And it brings me joy. It brings me more than if I'm the speaker or the talker and the extrovert. And then I don't think that people get me. That's another judgment on me. But I'm moving more into the introvert part.
Well, but see, the thing is, because if you really get down to it, that those key components of introversion and extroversion are really how you recharge. Do you recharge by being with other people, or recharge by being alone? It doesn't mean introverts, like if we look at movies like Office Space, where they show the introverts are always the nerds, over, and they can't talk to people and they're awkward and whatever. And the extroverts are on the other end of the scale, getting all the attention, and it's me, me, me. None of us are 100% one or the other. And we all have the ability to explore different facets of our personality. So being an extrovert, you are recharged by being with other people. And it's up to you if you're listening or if you're sharing, but you're getting recharged by being with other people. An introvert can still equally listen and share, but when it comes to the end of the conversation, we want to go away somewhere and just be quiet, where you probably want to have another 5 or 6 conversations. There's really not like the introvert is the deeper, more reflective person, but spending more time in quiet does allow for more of that, rather than when you're constantly stimulated by the human beings around you. But it doesn't mean that you're not a deep thinker and deeply connected with others if you're an extrovert.
No,
that make sense?
no, I don't think it does, because I'm always seeking from where I can remember, and whatever comes my way, I go, I listen, I read the other book, or the other book was going to open up my understanding, my horizon. My idea of God totally changed from when I was in my 20s or even 30s. He was somewhere over there. But sometimes in my excitement about this new book, and I want to share it, and nobody listens. Like,
I'm that way. I'm
that's not my cup of tea. Okay. Then it's kind of maybe.
But see, that's a little bit more of maybe an evangelical aspect of your personality than it is necessarily, like I have some evangelical, I like to share when I know something. I like to share when I've discovered something. And yeah, a lot of the time, and most of the time probably, people don't care. It's like, I mean, I was in therapy years ago with this brilliant man in Dallas, and he said to me, "Why? Just stop trying to help. People don't want your help." That's what he said to me. They don't want your help. I was like, and specifically in this conversation, it was my mom and my sister, I think we were talking about. And you know what? When I pulled back and stopped trying to share, or if I took a moment to explain to them, I'm only sharing because I find this valuable to me, but you might not, and that's okay with me, then it changed the dynamic, and they were kind of let off the hook from feeling like that I thought that I knew something more than they did, which wasn't really ever my intention, but it's how it came across to them. So, I had to forgive myself for being that person. I have to forgive myself pretty much every day for just, I am who I am, and that's just.
But
It's okay.
you don't have to forgive yourself for sharing good information, because you may run across somebody that really lights up when you give it to them. You just never know. I mean, the world is, what do they say? 98% of the world is sort of kind of in a sleepwalking. So, I mean, it's wonderful when you run across somebody that is of a similar mind, but you better be used to the fact that it's not very often.
That most people are not interested. And you know what? The fact is, so many times I will share something with someone, and then later, let's just say my sister, this is not necessarily my sister, but then later she'll say, "Oh, you know what? Dave's cousin's next door neighbor down the block over 2 streets she said this, and it was so brilliant." And I'm like, I've been saying that to you for years. It's when you finally hear it, right? I mean, you hear it when you hear it, because there's nothing new. Nothing I ever say is new. Nothing we learn is really ever new. It's just, we learn it in a different context, or we interact with it in a different way, and suddenly it takes meaning for us.
There is nothing new under the sun.
100% true. I believe that.
Speaking of sun, I love your Aurora Borealis. That's nice. Have you ever seen the Aurora Borealis in person?
I have not.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So the other night I was on a call with some friends. We were having a virtual party, and we were just playing around with, different backgrounds and laughing and just being ridiculous. We all put masks on so we could be extra safe in our virtual gathering.
Did you fool anybody?
No, we knew who was online because you can see their name right there. So it was fun. Hi, Sylvia, you joined, and Carol's been on the phone, I think. I don't see a video from Carol, but I see that she's there. And Sylvia's joined. Carol, we can't hear you either, but I think you might have said something because your box lit up.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello from Fredericksburg.
Hi, welcome.
I could uncover myself, but I haven't.
Oh my goodness.
Introvert.
Oh, believe me, I know all this videoing is just like ripped me. I'm just like, ah! Really brought up so many insecurities in me. So Carol, you stay right where you are and be comfortable. But would you like to add anything?
I got here 15 minutes late, but I've been enjoying Dave's comments, and I never feel very good when I get angry. And also, I think it does something with your cortisol that's pretty bad for your body. And but I do get angry sometimes, but it never feels good.
No.
Well, I'm not changing my feelings about that. It feels really good to me.
No, I think it depends on how that anger is affecting you. I think that's what it really gets down to. So if you just have a little outburst and it's really not, it's just you venting or whatever, that can feel really good. It's just a little release of energy. And sometimes we introverts, when we do release a negative energy, then we kind of turn it on ourselves and judge ourselves for having it. But as Hetty said, there's nothing wrong with having those emotions. And Dave is saying the same thing. You have that emotion, if you let it go, it's not as likely to get stuck in your body than if you're repressing it and turning it around, internalizing it. You missed the presentation part of it, Carol, but we were talking about physical effects of unforgiveness. And cortisol, raising your cortisol is definitely one of those. Increasing your heart rate, activating your sweat glands, all those stress factors. When you're in unforgiveness and you're holding a grudge or holding a judgment of someone, all of those stress factors are activated in your physical body.
I also believe,
Mandy
I
Russell?
also believe, yep, for a lot of us, I think I've pretty much overcome it, but there's a lot of shame in allowing yourself to be angry if you've been taught that, nice people don't act that way, or nice people don't have those feelings. And I think it connects to shame.
100%.
When you're angry.
And shame is one of the most toxic emotions. Shame and guilt are horrible for your psychological and your physiological well-being. And I think, especially I grew up in the South. I love the South. I love being a Southern woman. But I think, especially in the South, there's that extra pressure to smile, to grin and bear it, to, sugarcoat everything. But what, man?
Be sweet.
That's right. And what happens, ladies, we know this, is it, and you guys, you do this too, and you notice it turns people into passive aggressive because you smile and you jab with a smile on your face, instead of being truthful about who you are and what you're feeling, you wrap it up in a bow that's full of thorns and sharp blades. So it's good to just clean the slate, first of all, with forgiving ourselves. That's the first thing, because you can't forgive anyone else until you've fully forgiven yourself. So Rocio, I'm excited for you and the Ho'oponopono prayer that you're using to forgive yourself, because the more you forgive yourself, the more freely you can forgive others. It's back to that old analogy of putting the oxygen mask on first when you're on a plane. Anybody else?
I have a sister that used to talk to me free. She was older than I was, and so I wasn't aware of the fact that in my family, she was one who was told quite regularly that it was not proper for young ladies to get angry. And she used to tell me that all the time. And, ultimately she drank herself to death.
Yeah.
So, she never did finally get to the point where she could get beyond what the family was saying and begin to do what was really right for her. And I can't even imagine how therapeutic that would have been for her if she had been able to just blow off the steam. I'm sure there would have been an immediate positive response. So it's pretty sad, I think.
Yeah, and I think there are healthy ways and healthy places to blow off that esteem. And when people don't go to some kind of program or therapy or whatever where it's allowed, or they don't have a good friend, that's why they always say, women need women friends and men need men friends, because we have those people who understand how we think and communicate, who can just listen to us sometimes. Because that's often all we need, is someone who just can sit in nonviolent communication. There is a process called empathetic listening, where you're really just guessing the feelings of the other person as they're talking, because it helps them to kind of pinpoint different feelings that they may just be feeling angry right now, but underneath they're hurt or they're frustrated or they're disappointed. And when you start guessing those feelings, it opens up that flow of emotion. Because when I took that class, we studied that book at Unity Village when I was doing my licensed teacher nearly 20 years ago. At the end of the week, I was just sitting there crying. And the instructor was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I just realized how important this is, and how I don't know it now. I don't practice it now. I didn't know there wasn't a language of so many emotions. And I'm also a little bit afraid that I won't get it." So after that, I took a 9-day intensive with the man who wrote the book, and that helped me to get it more so. But I'm still, I've taught the class a number of times, because the more you teach something, the more you learn it. But there's a lot that we just don't learn in our family dynamics and in society in general, because of those things we've been taught to just smile and make nice, and that's a terrible thing to teach someone.
It's a matter of being honest with yourself. I mean, you just got to keep working on it. It's never ending. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be.
We need to learn a language to be able to express, and it needs to be a safe thing to do, to say, my feelings are hurt. Yeah. I'm disappointed. It doesn't have to be blame. And when you get to this, when you use this process of forgiveness, then you don't have to blame someone else because you have a feeling. I think that's kind of human nature. If I'm having an uncomfortable feeling, someone is to blame. And that's not necessarily true. And maybe not someone in the room, maybe someone in your life. Maybe you learned these unskillful ways of being in the world, for repressing your feelings or being nice or putting a smile or whatever. I mean, smiles are great, but they're better when they're sincere, when they really reflect, a happy spirit, than if we're just pasting one on.
Well, I think it's particularly important for you to say that to someone, if they've hurt their feelings, that you have hurt my feelings, because I can speak, not shooting at the male gender here, but I can think of numerous times where I didn't know that I had done something that would have been really beneficial if she, whoever that might be, had said, "You hurt my feelings," because then I would say, "Oh, I did," just completely oblivious to the fact that you said something that was taken.
Or my feelings were hurt when you said this. That's more owning my feelings are my feelings, and my feelings felt hurt when you said that. Didn't mean that you hurt my feelings, but my feelings felt hurt. And maybe my feelings felt hurt because I'd had an experience in my childhood that was bringing up. Doesn't mean that you were intentionally, it's.
You're gonna really confuse the guy doing that. You got to keep it simple, girls.
That's right.
Well,
I'm telling you, it's a whole different deal. You got to keep it simple.
that's why I said girls need girlfriends and guys need guy friends. Our brains are different. We just communicate differently.
Oh boy.
But it's, I think we all could learn not to say you did this to me, right? I'm feeling this in response, or I'm having a reaction to something you said and I'm feeling this. But that doesn't make it you did it to me. You know, it's different.
No, I absolutely agree if it's true.
Unless you meant to. Now, if you meant to hurt me.
My feelings are hurt, but it wasn't you.
Well, it could have been something you said. But it doesn't mean you meant to, right?
Yeah.
But if we all start from that point of grace in that one quote about that we did with I shared with you from Imelda Shanklin, forgive me for seeing in you, expecting you to become from your divine, right? As opposed to coming from your human. Forgive me for my way of looking at it. When you forgive yourself first, then it's so much easier to forgive the other person. Male or female, masculine or feminine. Because I don't think it's just a gender thing, honestly, because you know, I have some male friends that are all into their feminine energy, and they're not necessarily thinking the way you do. So it's not a man-woman thing, really. It's just the way we all think differently. And we're all amazing.
Okay, now that you smoothed that all over.
Well, I'm sure polishing awfully hard.
You're in a very playful mood, Mr. David.
This has been a fun one.
You made us laugh. My granddaughter was in kindergarten, and I don't know, second grade or something. She was really little, and she's very special. But anyway, I don't know what the little boy said to her, but she said to me, "He cracked my heart."
Oh.
Cracked my heart.
Oh. He cracked my heart. Oh. I felt that so many times as a child, you know, being a sensitive kid with very strong intuition and empathy. I mean, I was very empathic, and I was always feeling people's feelings, and things cracked my heart all the time. It was just,
for sure.
Yes, I totally get that. And still do, honestly. Well, we have about 4 minutes to wrap it up.
Meditation time?
Well, it would be a quick one, but we could do like just kind of.
We didn't start at 6.
I'm sorry, I was trying to get my new puppy to go outside, and she does not. She's
even 4 minutes is great.
Okay.
Did you say a new puppy?
I got a new puppy.
All right.
You got the new.
Tell me that you got a puppy.
No, I
Tell us.
It was only on Saturday night. So, what now?
Tell us about her.
Well, she's so sweet. She's her name is Carly. It was Scallop. They
What?
named all this litter after potato dishes.
What?
So she was Scallop potatoes. And she,
I thought maybe they were fishermen.
no, I thought so too. And I thought maybe her coloring was like a
Is
seared
she there where
skeleton.
you can hold her up and we can see her?
Yeah, she's so,
Well, let's
she's so,
see.
she's sweetly just lying here.
We got to see.
Yeah, a good idea, David.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you, can you see her?
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, isn't she great?
15 weeks old.
Fabulous.
And her mom was a rescue. And we don't know about the baby daddy so much because mom was in the backyard and one day some poodle visited. So that's possible with all the, and there was another time when she got
She looks
out.
like a Carly to me.
She does, doesn't she?
That's great.
That name came to me and I had not one moment of doubt. She just, and she's so docile. Look at her for a 15-week-old puppy. She's just calm and peaceful.
Uh-huh. That's great. Well,
And she's-
congratulations on the new puppy.
Thank you.
glad for
She's
you.
also very
Glad for you.
stubborn. She does not like to go outside and she doesn't want to walk with me. She's just like, I
Really?
don't know. I don't see the point of it.
She's
Oh.
an introvert.
She definitely is.
Right.
She is for sure. Well, thank you guys. We're right at 7 o'clock and I know we did start a little bit later and it's all her fault.
Just kidding you. Just kidding you. We love you.
I added this
Wednesday,
little bow
right?
to her harness today. She's so
Are
sweet.
there any more puppies like that? Are there any more?
She was the last one.
Oh, okay.
But I can ask if they have, if they, I don't know if they all stuck, but yeah, she was the one that the final one they were trying to get rid of. And it was, a friend of mine in Dallas posted something on Facebook from someone she didn't even know in San Antonio. And I just happened to see it. And so.
Meant to be?
when I-
It was
yeah, when
meant
I
to
saw
be.
her face, I
Mhm.
was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't wait any longer.
No, I just had to go get her that day. The day I saw it, I went to go get her. So
That's
Wow.
great.
Good.
Good move.
Yep.
yeah, she's super sweet.
Well, enjoy your puppy. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Good night,
Goodbye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Namaste. I
Bye-bye.
love you.
Namaste. Love you too.
Bye-bye.